My name is Emma Richardson. I'm 28 years old and 15 years ago, my own parents threw me out of their house when I was just 13. Last week, they showed up at my Uncle Benjamin's will reading, the man who raised me for the past 15 years, with confident smiles and a private attorney, absolutely certain they'd walk out with millions. But when attorney Catherine Bennett opened that sealed envelope and began reading, those smiles vanished like smoke in the wind. And when she reached Clause 7, my mother, the woman who once declared I was dead to her, shot to her feet. Her face went chalk white. Her mouth hung open in complete disbelief. Before I tell you what happened next, please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way I can see how far my story has traveled. To understand why my mother reacted that way, I need to take you back. Way back to the summer of 2010 when I was a 13-year-old girl who truly believed, that she was the root cause of every single problem in her family. I grew up in a modest house in southeast Portland. It wasn't much, but it was home. My father, Michael Richardson, worked as an auto mechanic at a shop downtown. He was a man of few words, and most of those words, they agreed with whatever my mother said. Always. My mother, Laura, she worked the checkout line at a grocery store and ran our household with the precision of someone who always knew exactly who deserved what. Who was worthy? Who wasn't? My sister Ashley was 2 years older than me. She had Mom's golden blonde hair, Mom's bright blue eyes, Mom's easy laugh that could fill a room. Everyone said so. Ashley looks just like you did at her age, Laura. And Mom would beam. Actually beam with pride. I looked like our late grandmother, Dad's mother. Brown hair, brown eyes, quiet disposition. Mom never said it was a bad thing outright. She just never said much about me at all. And somehow that silence said everything. The differences showed up everywhere. Everywhere. For Ashley's 15th birthday, Mom threw a party with 15 guests, a 3-tier cake from the fancy bakery on Hawthorne, and a karaoke machine rental. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers. There were gifts everywhere. For my 13th birthday 3 months later, it was the 4 of us around the kitchen table with a marked-down cake from the grocery store where Mom worked. The frosting said, "Happy Birthday." No name. Just those 2 generic words. A leftover from someone else's canceled order. I didn't realize what was happening. Not really. Not until I was 12. That's when I discovered Ashley had a college savings account that had been opened when she was 5 years old. 5. 8 years of deposits. Thousands and thousands of dollars sitting there, waiting for her future. I asked Mom why I didn't have one. She looked at me like the question surprised her. Like I'd asked why the sky was blue. "Ashley needs money for college," she said so matter-of-factly. "You'll figure something out. You're good at adapting." That was the first time I understood my place in this family. I was the spare child. Kept around, fed, clothed. But never truly wanted. Never chosen. The summer of 2010 changed everything. In April of that year, I applied for the Oregon STEM Summer Academy at Oregon State University. It was a 6-week residential program for students who showed exceptional promise in science and mathematics. The scholarship covered everything: tuition, room and board, materials. Total value? $4,200. I didn't tell anyone I applied. I'd learned not to get my hopes up out loud in that house. Hope was dangerous. On May 15th, the acceptance letter arrived. Out of over 2,000 applicants from across Oregon, only 50 students had been selected. 50. I was one of them. For exactly one afternoon, one beautiful shining afternoon, I felt like I mattered. Like I was special. Like maybe, just maybe, I deserved good things too. Then Ashley found out about a performing arts camp in California that her drama teacher had mentioned. 3 weeks. No scholarship. Price tag? $3,800. That night at dinner, Mom announced the solution she'd worked out in her head. "Emma, you'll decline that science thing," she said, cutting into her chicken like we were discussing meal planning, not crushing someone's dreams. "We can't afford to send both of you to summer programs, and Ashley's camp will help her college applications." I stared at my plate. The mashed potatoes were going cold. The words came out before I could stop them. No. The whole table went silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. Time just froze. "Excuse me." Mom's voice dropped to that dangerous register I'd heard her use on store customers who tried to use expired coupons. "This scholarship isn't your money to redirect," I said. My voice was shaking, but the words were clear. Strong. "I earned this. It's mine." Mom looked at me like I transformed into a stranger right before her eyes. Like she didn't recognize her own daughter. "If you can't sacrifice for this family," she said slowly, each word deliberate, "then you're not part of this family." 13. I thought she was just angry. I thought she'd cool down. I thought this was just another argument. I didn't realize she meant it literally. 3 days after that dinner, 3 days, I came home from the public library to find my belongings packed into 2 black garbage bags sitting on the front porch. 2 garbage bags. That's what my entire life amounted to. My mother stood in the doorway, arms crossed. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked resolved. Like someone who just finished an unpleasant chore and could finally move on. "I called Benjamin," she said. No emotion in her voice at all. "He'll be here to pick you up. From now on, you're his problem." I stood there on the porch I'd known my entire life, trying to process what was happening. My brain couldn't catch up. This couldn't be real. Behind Mom, I could see Dad in the hallway. He didn't look at me. He didn't say anything. He just stood there. I looked up at the second-floor window. Ashley was watching from behind the curtain. When our eyes met, she stepped back into the shadows of her room. She didn't come down. She never came down. I waited on that porch from 6 in the evening until 10 at night. For hours. For long dark hours. My mother went back inside after the first 5 minutes. The porch light never came on. Uncle Benjamin lived in Seattle, 3 hours away. He drove through the night to get to me. When his gray Honda pulled into the driveway, I was still sitting on those garbage bags, knees pulled to my chest, trying to make myself as small as possible. He got out without saying anything at first. Just walked up, looked at me with these sad, sad eyes, and wrapped me in a hug so tight I couldn't breathe. "From now on," he said quietly, "you have a home." That night, as we drove north through the darkness toward Seattle, I didn't know that my mother had signed a document before Uncle Benjamin left. I didn't know what it meant. I was just a scared kid staring out the window, wondering what I'd done wrong. Wondering what was so terrible about me that my own mother could throw me away like trash. It would take 15 years for that document to resurface. And when it did, it would change everything. Uncle Benjamin's house in Seattle's Ballard neighborhood wasn't large, but to me, it felt enormous compared to the cramped, suffocating space I'd occupied in my family's home. For the first time in my life, the very first time, I had a room that was entirely mine. My own space. My own sanctuary. More importantly, I had someone who believed in me. Uncle Benjamin had built Richardson Property Holdings from scratch. From nothing. A commercial real estate company he'd started with a single small office building he'd purchased after working double shifts for 6 years straight. By 2010, he owned 8 properties across the Seattle metro area. He never married. Never had children of his own. When I arrived on his doorstep with nothing but 2 garbage bags and a broken heart, he didn't just take me in. He invested in me. In my future. In who I could become. Over the next 4 years, I poured myself into school. Every assignment, every test, every project, I gave it everything I had. I graduated from Ballard High in 2014 as class valedictorian, president of the math club, with a perfect 4.0 unweighted GPA. The University of Washington offered me admission with a partial scholarship to their Foster School of Business. By 2018, I had my bachelor's degree in finance. I graduated summa cum laude with a 3.94 GPA. Uncle Benjamin had given me internship opportunities at Richardson Property Holdings starting my sophomore year. I learned the business from the ground up. Data entry, lease analysis, tenant relations, property assessments. Everything. In 2019, after 18 months at a Big Four accounting firm, I earned my CPA certification. 1 year later, Uncle Benjamin offered me a position as controller. By 2021, I was CFO, Chief Financial Officer. On my 26th birthday, I managed a portfolio of 12 commercial properties with a combined value of $23.7 million. Uncle Benjamin sent me an email that day. I still have it saved. I'll never delete it. The subject line read, "To my daughter." Not niece. Daughter. The message was simple. You don't need to prove anything to the people who abandoned you. But you do need to prove to yourself that you're worthy. You have. Happy birthday, Emma. I cried reading that email. Actually cried at my desk. In 15 years, my biological family reached out exactly 3 times. The first was in 2012. My mother called Uncle Benjamin's phone, not mine, never mine, to ask for $5,000. Dad had lost his job at the auto shop. Times were hard. Surely Benjamin could help his own brother, right? Uncle Benjamin declined. He told me about the call afterward, his jaw tight with anger. They haven't asked about you once, he said. Not how you're doing in school. Not if you're okay. Not if you're happy. They just want money. The second contact came in 2016. Ashley mailed me a wedding invitation. No personal note. No, I hope you're well. No, I've missed you. Just the formal printed card with my name and Uncle Benjamin's Seattle address. I didn't attend. I didn't send a gift. I didn't respond at all. The third contact was in 2020. My mother sent me an email, the first direct contact she'd initiated since throwing me out. The subject line was checking in. Checking in. The message mentioned that she'd seen an article in Seattle Business Journal about Richardson Property Holdings expanding into the East Side market. She hoped I was doing well. She suggested we should catch up sometime. I deleted the email without responding. I wasn't holding grudges. I promise you I wasn't. I had simply built a life that didn't include them. A good life. A successful life. A life where I was loved unconditionally. And I saw no reason to change that. In the summer of 2024, Uncle Benjamin received a diagnosis that changed everything. Congestive heart failure. Advanced stage. The doctors gave him 12 to 18 months. He lasted 8 months of watching the man who saved me slowly fade away. During those final months, Uncle Benjamin met with his estate attorney multiple times. He updated his will in June 2024, 6 months before he passed. When I asked him about it, trying to stay strong, trying not to cry, he just smiled that gentle smile of his. Everything's taken care of, he said, squeezing my hand. You focus on the business. I've handled the rest. I didn't know what he'd written. I didn't know about the clauses, the protections, the strategies. I trusted him completely. I had no idea what was coming. Uncle Benjamin passed away on February 28, 2025. He went peacefully in his sleep at Swedish Medical Center. I was holding his hand when he took his last breath. I felt him slip away. 1 week later, on March 7th, I was in my office at Richardson Property Holdings when my phone buzzed with an unknown Portland number. I almost didn't answer. Emma. The voice was immediately recognizable. 15 years hadn't changed my mother's particular way of saying my name. Like she was tasting something she wasn't sure she wanted to swallow. Laura. I kept my voice neutral, professional. Not Mom. Just her name. A brief pause. I could almost hear her recalibrating, adjusting her approach. I heard about Benjamin, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. I was thinking I should come up for the memorial service. Pay my respects. The memorial was 3 days ago. Another pause. Longer this time. Oh, well, I also heard there's a will reading coming up. Family has a right to attend these things, you know. Especially when it involves a brother's estate. There it was. The real reason for the call. How did you find out about the will reading? I have an attorney. Victor Harrington. He made some calls. The name sparked a faint memory. Uncle Benjamin had mentioned a Victor Harrington once, an attorney he'd consulted years ago and decided not to work with. Something about not trusting the man's motives. I spoke to Catherine Bennett, Uncle Benjamin's estate attorney, the next morning. She confirmed my suspicions. Laura had hired Victor Harrington to file a claim challenging the will. Their grounds? Undue influence. They were alleging that I had manipulated a sick, dying man in his final months. That I'd isolated him from his family. That I'd stolen what rightfully belonged to them. They were also demanding to attend the will reading as immediate family members of the deceased. I stared at the photo of Uncle Benjamin on my desk. In the picture he was smiling. Almost like he'd known this would happen. Almost like he'd planned for it. And you know what? I think he had. The will reading was scheduled for Friday, March 14, 2025, at 2 p.m. in the Bennett and Associates conference room. 5 days away. 5 days to prepare for the confrontation I'd been avoiding for 15 years. But here's what you need to understand. I wasn't afraid anymore. Not like I used to be. Because I finally knew something that 13-year-old girl sitting on that porch didn't know. I knew my worth. And no one, not my mother, not her attorney, not anyone, could take that away from me again. What do you think happened at that will reading? Drop your guess in the comments. And trust me, you're going to want to hear how this plays out. Stay tuned. The Bennett and Associates conference room occupied a corner of the 47th floor with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of Elliott Bay and the Olympic Mountains beyond. On a clear day, it would have been breathtaking. On March 14, 2025, the sky was overcast. The water was steel gray, matching my mood perfectly. I arrived 15 minutes early, at 1:45 p.m. I wore a navy blue tailored suit, professional understated. My hair was pulled back in a simple bun. I'd learned from Uncle Benjamin that the most powerful people in the room never needed to announce themselves. The conference room could seat 20 at the main table, with additional chairs arranged along the walls. When I entered, 14 people were already present. Catherine Bennett sat at the head of the table with 2 junior associates. Thomas Graham, the senior auditor who had handled Uncle Benjamin's accounts for a decade, occupied a seat near the window. Representatives from 3 charitable organizations filled several chairs: Seattle Children's Hospital, Habitat for Humanity Northwest, and the Olympic National Park Foundation. Uncle Benjamin had been a significant donor to all 3 for over 20 years. 5 senior staff members from Richardson Property Holdings sat together near the door. They'd worked with Uncle Benjamin for years. They'd watched me grow up. They knew the truth. Catherine caught my eye and nodded toward a seat at the center of the table, directly across from where she would be reading the will. I took my place, arranging the folder of documents my friend Elena had prepared in front of me. Through the glass wall of the conference room, I could see the elevator lobby. At 2:03 p.m., the elevator doors opened. My mother stepped out first. Even from across the floor, I could see she'd dressed for the occasion. Black dress, pearl necklace, full makeup. She looked like she was attending a funeral for someone she'd actually cared about. Behind her came my father, my sister, and a man in an expensive suit carrying a designer briefcase. The show was about to begin. Laura Richardson entered that conference room like she owned it. That was always her way, projecting confidence she hadn't earned, claiming space she hadn't been given. Behind her, my father Michael shuffled in, wearing a gray suit that didn't quite fit anymore. He'd gained weight in the years since I'd seen him. His eyes found me briefly, then darted away. He'd always been good at looking away. Ashley followed in a pastel pink dress. An odd choice for a will reading, like she'd gotten confused about what event she was attending. At 30, she looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the early morning flight from Portland. Their attorney Victor Harrington brought up the rear. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of polished confidence that came from decades of high-stakes litigation. His briefcase probably cost more than my first month's salary. Laura's gaze swept the room until it landed on me. "Ah," she said, her voice carrying in that way she'd perfected. "You're here already." I didn't stand. Laura. That single word, her name, not Mom, made her pause mid-stride. Something flickered across her face. Confusion? Anger? Recognition that things had changed? Then she recovered. "I was hoping we could speak privately before this starts," she said, attempting warmth that didn't reach her eyes. "Family matters should be handled by family." "The proceedings begin in 2 minutes," I said calmly. "I'm sure whatever you have to say can wait." Catherine Bennett rose from her seat with professional authority. "Mrs. Richardson, Mr. Richardson, Ms. Richardson, Mr. Harrington, there are seats arranged for attending parties along the wall. The main table is reserved for beneficiaries and estate representatives." Laura's jaw tightened visibly. She'd expected a seat at the center of things. Instead, she was being directed to the margins. She wasn't even at the table. Laura didn't take her seat quietly. Oh no. Instead, she detoured past the representatives from Seattle Children's Hospital, pausing to introduce herself with an expression of practiced sorrow. "I'm Laura Richardson," she announced loud enough for most of the room to hear. Benjamin's sister-in-law. We were quite close for many years before this unfortunate estrangement. She glanced meaningfully in my direction, playing the victim beautifully. The hospital representative, a woman in her 50s named Dr. Patricia Wells, nodded politely but said nothing. Laura continued undeterred. It's so tragic how some people come into a family and create division, she said, her voice dripping with false grief. Benjamin was such a generous man, so trusting, perhaps too trusting. I kept my eyes on my folder. I didn't respond. I'd learned long ago that Laura fed on reactions like a vampire feeds on blood. Ashley, settling into a chair against the wall, added her piece. Uncle Benjamin used to visit us in Portland all the time when we were kids, she said with manufactured confusion. I don't understand why she gets to sit up there and we're back here. Victor Harrington was already taking notes, his pen moving across a legal pad, documenting everything, building their case, looking for any reaction he could twist. I gave him nothing. Laura took her seat beside Ashley, but she wasn't finished. As Catherine organized her papers at the head of the table, Laura's voice cut through the quiet room once more. A child who's been rejected by her parents usually has a reason, she said, her words sharp as knives. I just wish Benjamin had seen through her the way we did. A mother always knows. The words hung in the air like poison. Several people in the room shifted uncomfortably. Thomas Graham, the auditor, was staring at Laura with open disbelief. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in 15 years. She hadn't changed at all. The same certainty. The same need to control the narrative. The same absolute conviction that she was the victim. Catherine cleared her throat. It's 2:10. We'll begin. Catherine Bennett broke the seal on a large envelope with careful precision. This is the last will and testament of Benjamin Raymond Richardson, she began, her voice carrying the formal weight the moment demanded. Born July 4, 1953. Deceased February 28, 2025. This document was executed on June 18, 2024, and represents the final expression of Mr. Richardson's wishes regarding the disposition of his estate. Laura sat forward slightly, her pearl necklace catching the light. Already counting money in her head, Catherine continued reading the preliminary sections. Article 1 confirmed Benjamin's identity and residence. Article 2 declared him to be of sound mind. Please note, Catherine read, that a psychiatric evaluation was conducted by Dr. Stephen Park on June 10, 2024, 8 days before this will was signed. The evaluation confirmed Mr. Richardson possessed full testamentary capacity and was under no undue influence at the time of execution. I caught Laura exchanging a glance with Victor Harrington. They'd been banking on challenging Benjamin's mental state. This documentation just complicated their strategy significantly. Article 3 revoked all prior wills and codicils. Then Catherine turned to Article 4, the inventory of assets. At the time of death, Mr. Richardson's estate included the following: 12 commercial properties located throughout King County and Snohomish County, with a combined assessed value of $18.2 million. Investment accounts containing diversified equity holdings valued at approximately $4.1 million. Cash and liquid assets totaling $1.4 million. I heard Ashley whisper to Laura, "That's almost $24 million." Laura nodded, her eyes calculating, already spending money she hadn't earned. Catherine looked up briefly. The will contains 47 pages. I will now proceed to Article 5, which addresses specific bequests and exclusions. She turned the page and adjusted her reading glasses. Article 5 regarding Michael James Richardson, brother of the deceased. Laura actually smiled. She wouldn't be smiling for long. Catherine's voice was steady as she read the opening line. I make no provision in this will for my brother Michael James Richardson, for the following reasons, which I wish to be read aloud and entered into the record. Laura's smile flickered like a candle in the wind. Catherine continued reading Benjamin's words. First, in March of 2002, Michael borrowed $80,000 from me with a written promise to repay the full amount within 5 years. 23 years have passed. Not one single dollar has been returned. I have retained the original promissory note as documentation. Michael's face went pale. Completely pale. He hadn't expected this. Second, on July 15, 2010, Michael and his wife Laura voluntarily executed a legal document relinquishing all parental rights to their daughter, Emma Marie Richardson, transferring full guardianship to me. This document was properly witnessed and notarized. Laura shot to her feet like she'd been electrocuted. What does that have to do with anything? Catherine paused, looked at Laura over her glasses, and continued reading without acknowledging the outburst. The significance of this document is as follows. By legally terminating their parental relationship with Emma, Michael and Laura severed any claim they might have had to inherit from me through her. Emma is my legal heir. Michael is not her legal father. Therefore, Michael has no familial relationship with my designated heir, and no standing to challenge this will on grounds of family connection. Michael stood now too, his voice shaking. This is ridiculous. I'm Benjamin's brother. His blood brother. Victor Harrington grabbed Michael's arm, pulling him back down, but even the attorney's face had gone gray. His carefully constructed case was crumbling before his eyes. Catherine reached into her file and produced a document. For the record, the original voluntary relinquishment of parental rights is on file with King County Family Court, file number 2010-5847. I have a certified copy here, which any party may examine. She laid the document on the table like a trump card. Laura stared at it like it was a live grenade about to explode. And honestly, it was. You're not going to believe what happened next. This is where everything I've been holding inside for 15 years finally came out. Stay with me. Laura didn't sit back down. Her carefully constructed composure, that careful mask she'd worn into the room, cracked visibly spectacularly. Her voice rose sharp and desperate. This is insane. That paper doesn't mean anything. We're still her family. Catherine's voice remained level, professional, unbothered. Mrs. Richardson, I must ask you to take your seat. Disrupting the reading of a will is a matter the court takes seriously. Laura ignored her completely. She pointed directly at me, her fingers shaking with rage. She did this. She manipulated Benjamin against his own family. She poisoned him against us. Dr. Patricia Wells from Seattle Children's Hospital looked uncomfortable. The charity representatives hadn't signed up for a family meltdown. Ashley tugged at Laura's sleeve, mortified. Mom, sit down. People are watching. I don't care who's watching. Laura's voice cracked, raw emotion bleeding through. I want to know how this happened. Benjamin loved Michael. They were brothers. Finally I spoke. My voice came out calm, steady, the way Uncle Benjamin had taught me to speak in difficult negotiations. Never raise your voice. Make them strain to hear you. Laura, you made a choice 15 years ago. You put my belongings in garbage bags and left me on a porch in the dark for 4 hours. Then you went inside and signed a document giving me away. I was 13 years old. The room was absolutely silent. You could have heard a pin drop. That was your decision, I continued, looking directly into her eyes. Not mine. Not Uncle Benjamin's. Yours. Everything that's happening today is simply the consequence of what you chose to do that night. Laura's mouth opened, but no words came out. For the first time in her life, she had nothing to say. I don't hate you, I said quietly. But I also don't owe you anything. You made sure of that when you signed that paper. Victor Harrington was writing furiously on his legal pad, though I couldn't imagine what strategy he thought he could salvage from this disaster. Catherine cleared her throat. If we may continue. I haven't yet read Clause 7. Laura finally sank back into her chair, looking 10 years older than when she'd walked in. But Clause 7. Oh, Clause 7 was the one that would truly end all her hopes. Catherine turned to page 12 of the will and paused. Then she read the words that would change everything. Article 7. Designation of sole beneficiary. The room held its breath. I hereby bequeath the entirety of my estate, including all real property, investment accounts, liquid assets and personal effects, to my legally adopted daughter Emma Marie Richardson. Adopted. The word hung in the air like a thunderclap. Laura's face went white. Actually white. Like someone had drained every drop of blood from her head. Adopted. Michael's voice was hoarse, disbelieving. Since when? Catherine answered with the same calm precision she'd used throughout. Mr. Benjamin Richardson formally adopted Emma Marie Richardson on September 12, 2012, when she was 15 years old. The adoption was finalized in King County Family Court, file number 2012-3291. As Mr. and Mrs. Michael Richardson had already legally relinquished their parental rights in 2010, no additional consent was required. Ashley stared at me, her face a mixture of shock and something that might have been hurt. So you're not related to us anymore? I met her eyes. Not legally. Not since Mom and Dad signed me away. Catherine continued reading, and this part broke me. Emma is not merely a beneficiary. She is my daughter in every way that matters. Legally, practically, and emotionally. She has worked alongside me for years, proven her competence and integrity, and I trust her completely to continue the work I began. There is no one more deserving of this inheritance, and no one I love more. My vision blurred. Tears streamed down my face. I blinked them back, but they kept coming. Uncle Benjamin had never told me about the full language of this clause. He'd kept it a secret, waiting for this moment, knowing it might come, knowing I'd need to hear those words. Laura was shaking her head slowly, like someone trying to wake from a nightmare. This can't be legal, she whispered, her voice broken. Victor, tell them this can't be legal. Victor Harrington didn't answer. He was staring at his legal pad, pen motionless. He knew the case was over before it had even begun. Catherine reached into her folder and withdrew a sealed envelope, smaller than the others. There's one more item, she said softly. Mr. Richardson left a personal letter for Emma with instructions that I offer to read a portion aloud during this proceeding, if Emma consents. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Catherine opened the envelope carefully and unfolded a single handwritten page. Uncle Benjamin's familiar script filled the paper, the same handwriting I'd seen on birthday cards and emails and notes left on my desk over 15 years. Catherine began to read and I started crying harder. Emma, if this letter is being read aloud, it means things happened exactly as I expected. Your biological family showed up looking for money they never earned from a man they never cared about. I'm sorry you have to go through this, but I also know you're strong enough to handle it. A soft sound escaped Laura's throat, almost a whimper. You came to me as a wounded child, thrown away by people who should have protected you. But you didn't let that define you. You transformed your pain into determination, your loneliness into independence, your rejection into resilience. I have never been more proud of anyone in my entire life. Catherine's voice softened slightly as she continued. I didn't save you, Emma. You saved yourself. I just gave you a place to do it. Everything you've achieved, your education, your career, your character, you earned through your own effort. I'm leaving you my estate not because you need it, but because you deserve it, and because I know you'll use it to help others the way I tried to help you. I was openly sobbing now. I didn't try to stop. Don't let them make you feel guilty for surviving them. Don't let them back in unless you choose to. You owe them nothing. You owe yourself everything. I love you, Emma. Forever your father, Benjamin. The silence in that room was deafening. Laura made one last desperate play. She stood again, but this time her voice had shifted. The anger was gone, replaced by something that was meant to sound like wounded motherhood. Emma, sweetheart, she said, her voice trembling. I know things were hard when you were young. I made mistakes. I admit that now. But we're still blood. We can work through this. Can't we at least talk about dividing the estate fairly? I wiped my eyes and looked at her. You gave up the right to call me sweetheart 15 years ago. I want to contest this will, Laura announced to the room, desperation making her voice shrill. Victor, tell them we have grounds. Undue influence. Benjamin was sick. She isolated him. Victor Harrington finally spoke, though he sounded like a man reading his own obituary. Mrs. Richardson, perhaps we should discuss our options privately. No. Laura's voice cracked. Tell them we're going to fight this. Catherine interrupted by turning her tablet around to face the room. On the screen was an email thread. Mr. Harrington, perhaps you'd like to explain this to your clients. The room went quiet. Catherine read aloud. This is an email dated March 3, 2022, from Benjamin Richardson to Victor Harrington. The subject line is, terminating services. In the email, Mr. Richardson writes, Victor, I am ending our professional relationship. Your advice that I include Michael in my estate plan, despite his years of financial exploitation and his treatment of Emma, is unacceptable. I will be engaging new counsel. She looked up at Victor. You previously represented Benjamin Richardson. You were terminated because you advocated for Michael's interests over Benjamin's wishes. And now you've accepted this case against Benjamin's estate, without disclosing that conflict of interest to your current clients. Victor's face had gone the color of old concrete. Laura turned to stare at him, betrayal written across her face. You told me we would win. He had no answer. None at all. Victor Harrington stood up abruptly, gathering his designer briefcase with shaking hands. I need to review these documents, he said, his voice stripped of its earlier polish. We should discuss our options privately, Mrs. Richardson. Discuss what? Laura's voice was rising again, panicking. You're leaving? Right now? In the middle of this? Victor didn't answer. He was already moving toward the door, walking with the stiff gait of a man who knew his career might be imploding. Victor! Laura called after him. Victor! The conference room door closed behind him with a soft click. Laura stood frozen, abandoned by her own attorney in front of everyone she'd hoped to impress. Michael hadn't said a word in minutes. He sat slumped in his chair, staring at the floor. He'd spent his whole life following Laura's lead, and now she had led them both off a cliff. Ashley was crying quietly. I couldn't tell if she was upset about the money or about the public humiliation. Laura turned back to me one more time. The mask was completely gone now. Underneath it was just desperation. And beneath that, something that might have been the first stirrings of real regret. Emma, her voice broke. We can still. We're still a family, aren't we? Blood is blood. You could still. I stood up from the table. Laura, you stopped being my family on July 15, 2010. You signed the document yourself. I didn't make that choice. You did. I gathered my folder and looked at her steadily. I don't hate you. I actually feel sorry for you. But you have no claim on me. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any way that matters. I turned to Catherine. Can we continue with the remaining articles? Catherine nodded, respect in her eyes. Laura sat down heavily. She didn't speak again for the rest of the reading. What happened after that conference room emptied changed everything again. You won't believe the twist that came next. Stay tuned. 1 week after the will reading, Catherine Bennett filed a formal complaint with the Washington State Bar Association. The subject? Victor Harrington's ethical violations. I didn't ask her to do it. She did it because it was her professional obligation. When an attorney witnesses another attorney violating the rules of professional conduct, reporting isn't optional. It's required. The complaint outlined 3 major violations. First, conflict of interest. Harrington had previously represented Benjamin Richardson and gained confidential information about his estate planning. Second, failure to disclose. Harrington never told Laura or Michael about his prior relationship with Benjamin. Third, misrepresentation. Harrington had led his clients to believe they had a strong case when he knew, or should have known, that their legal position was fundamentally compromised. Catherine kept me updated throughout the process. 2 months after the filing in late May 2025, the Bar Association issued its ruling. Victor Harrington was suspended from practicing law for 6 months. He was also fined $15,000 and required to complete additional ethics training. Within weeks of the suspension, 3 of Harrington's largest clients quietly transferred their business elsewhere. I heard through legal community gossip that his firm's revenue dropped by roughly $200,000 that year. Elena, my best friend and the HR director at Richardson Property Holdings, asked me once if I felt satisfied by Harrington's downfall. I didn't do anything to him, I told her honestly. He did this to himself. I just happened to be there when the consequences caught up. That was the truth. I hadn't sought revenge against Victor Harrington. I hadn't filed the complaint. I hadn't lobbied for his suspension. He had made his own choices, taking a case he knew was ethically compromised, lying to clients who trusted him, betting he could win through intimidation rather than merit. His career suffered because of what he chose to do. Some people build their own prisons without any help. 3 weeks after the will reading, an email appeared in my inbox from Laura Richardson 1969@gmail.com. Subject: Please read. The message was longer than I expected. Laura had never been one for written communication. She preferred phone calls where she could control the tone, interrupt, redirect. Emma, I know you probably won't read this, but I need to say some things. I've been thinking about what happened at the will reading. I was angry and I said things I shouldn't have, but I want you to know that I understand now that I made mistakes when you were young. I was overwhelmed. Your father and I were struggling financially. Things got away from us. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for a chance to make things right. We're still family, Emma. Blood doesn't just disappear because of legal papers. I'm your mother. Nothing can change that. Can we talk? I think if we just sat down together, we could work through this. I love you. I always have. Mom. I read the email 3 times. Then I called Dr. Hayes, my therapist, and read it to her over the phone. What do you notice about the email? She asked. I thought about it carefully. She acknowledges mistakes but doesn't name what they were. She blames circumstances, financial struggles, being overwhelmed. She says she's not asking for money, but then pivots to working through this. And she still calls herself mom, even though she signed away that right. What do you want to do? I took 2 days to write my response. It was 4 sentences long. Laura, I've read your email. I forgave you a long time ago, for myself, not for you. But I don't want a relationship with you. Please don't contact me again. She didn't reply. I felt no guilt, only clarity. 2 months after the will reading, a letter arrived at my Seattle address. Not an email, an actual letter, handwritten on plain paper, stuffed into a slightly wrinkled envelope with a Portland postmark. The return address listed A. Warren. Ashley had taken her ex-husband's name when she got married. I opened it reluctantly, expecting more manipulation. What I found was different. Emma, I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I don't want money. I don't want forgiveness. I just need to say something I should have said 15 years ago. The night Mom and Dad kicked you out, I was watching from my bedroom window. I saw you sitting on the porch with those garbage bags. I watched for 4 hours. I saw you alone in the dark, waiting, and I never came down. I could have. I was 15. I could have brought you water or sat with you or at least told you I was sorry. Instead, I just watched from the window like a coward. That's haunted me ever since. Every time Mom would talk about you, always blaming you, always making herself the victim, I would think about that window, about what I didn't do. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm not asking for a relationship. I just wanted you to know that I know what I did was wrong. I failed you when you needed family most. You deserved better from your older sister. If you never want to hear from me again, I understand. But I couldn't let another year pass without telling you the truth. Ashley. I read the letter 4 times. It was the first honest thing anyone in my biological family had ever said to me. I didn't write back immediately. I needed time to figure out what, if anything, I wanted to do with this unexpected opening. But for the first time in 15 years, I felt something other than distance when I thought about my sister. Tell me in the comments. And if you've dealt with something similar, share your story. You're not alone. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. For months after the will reading, I finally wrote back to Ashley. Dr. Hayes had helped me think through what I actually wanted. Not what I felt obligated to do. Not what would look generous or forgiving. What I genuinely wanted for myself. The answer surprised me. I didn't want to shut Ashley out completely. Her letter had been the first honest acknowledgement of what happened that night. No excuses. No deflection. No requests for money. Just accountability. But I also wasn't ready to trust her. 15 years of distance doesn't disappear because of one letter. So I wrote back with conditions. Ashley, I've read your letter many times. I appreciate that you acknowledged what happened without making excuses. That took courage. I'm not ready for a full relationship, but I'm open to cautious contact under these conditions. First, no contact through Mom or Dad. I've ended communication with them permanently, and I need that boundary respected. Second, no discussions about money, inheritance, or anything related to Uncle Benjamin's estate. Ever. Third, I reserve the right to end any conversation without explanation. If I go quiet, I need you to respect that. If these conditions work for you, we can start with a monthly video call. 15 minutes. Low pressure. We can talk about our lives surface level at first. If that goes well, we can gradually build from there. This isn't me saying everything is forgiven and forgotten. This is me saying I'm willing to see if there's something worth building, but it has to be on my terms. Let me know if you accept these conditions. Emma. Her reply came 3 days later. One word. Accepted. I scheduled our first call for the following Saturday. 15 minutes. That was all I could commit to, but it was a start. The first video call with Ashley happened on a Saturday afternoon in September 2025, 6 months after the will reading. I sat in my home office with my laptop open, watching the seconds count down until 2 p.m. My heart was beating faster than it had during the will reading. This felt more dangerous somehow. Confronting Laura had been about defending myself against an attack. This was about choosing to be vulnerable. The call connected. Ashley's face filled the screen. She looked different than she had at the will reading. Less made up. More tired. But also somehow more real. Hi, she said softly. Hi. We stared at each other for a moment. 15 years compressed into a video call rectangle. I wasn't sure you'd actually answer, she admitted. I almost didn't. That broke something loose. Ashley laughed. A nervous, relieved sound. And I found myself almost smiling. We kept it light as I'd requested. Surface level. She told me about her job. She was training to become a nail technician, working toward getting licensed. She mentioned her kids, Jaden, 8 and Lily, 6, without asking me to be their aunt. I told her about the business, about Seattle weather, about nothing too personal. 14 minutes I said we should wrap up. Emma. Ashley's voice stopped me before I could end the call. Thank you for giving me a chance. I know you didn't have to. This is step 1, I said. We'll see where it goes. Step 1 is more than I expected. We scheduled another call for the following month. After she hung up, I sat in my office for a long time processing. I didn't know if Ashley and I would ever have a real relationship. Maybe we'd stay in this tentative place forever. But for the first time, I was the one deciding what happened next. That power was worth more than the inheritance. March 14, 2026. 1 year exactly since the will reading that changed everything. I stood outside a modest commercial building on Capitol Hill, the first property Uncle Benjamin ever purchased back in 1987, when he was a 34-year-old with a dream and barely enough money for a down payment. The building had been renovated last fall. New windows, updated HVAC, fresh landscaping. But today I was here for something else. A bronze plaque had been mounted beside the main entrance. The Benjamin R. Richardson Building. In memory of a man who chose love over blood. 1953 to 2025. I touched the letters of his name, feeling the cold metal under my fingertips. In the year since the will reading, Richardson property holdings had grown by 12%, bringing the portfolio value to $26.5 million. Occupancy rates remained above 95%. We'd expanded into 2 new properties and upgraded 3 existing ones. More importantly, the Richardson STEM Scholarship had awarded its first grants. 5 students from difficult family situations, each receiving full funding for summer programs in science and mathematics. Dr. Wells at Seattle Children's Hospital had helped select the recipients. One of them was a 13-year-old girl who'd been kicked out by her parents. When I read her application, I cried for an hour. Tiffany and I still talked once a month. The conversations had gotten slightly easier. We'd graduated from 15 minutes to 25. I'd seen pictures of her kids. She'd seen pictures of my apartment. We weren't sisters in any traditional sense, but we were something. Laura and Michael had stopped trying to contact me. I didn't know what their lives looked like now, and I found that I didn't need to know. Elena walked up beside me, looking at the plaque. You okay? I considered the question. I'm peaceful, I said. That's even better than happy. Uncle Benjamin had taught me that family is a choice, and I had finally learned to choose myself. The sky over Seattle was clear for the first time in weeks. I could see all the way to the mountains. If I look at my own story through a psychological lens, there's a concept called conditional self-worth. The belief that you're only valuable if certain people approve of you. I spent the first 13 years of my life trapped in that belief. My mother's indifference felt like proof that I didn't matter. What actually saved me wasn't Uncle Benjamin's money. It was his unconditional acceptance. He saw me for who I was, not who I should have been. Here's what I want you to take from this story. You don't need anyone's permission to know your worth. And you have every right to set boundaries, even with family, even with parents, even with blood. Forgiveness is something you do for yourself. Reconciliation is something you choose for yourself. These are two different things. And no one gets to decide which one you offer. Your story is yours to write. Thank you for staying with me through this entire story. If it resonated with you, if you've ever had to find your own worth after someone tried to take it away, I hope you know you're not alone. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And check the description for links to similar stories about boundaries, family, and finding your own way. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve it.